if I told you that the key to transforming every struggle, every challenge, and every heartbreak into a blessing is within your grasp right now? What if the very hardship you're enduring is a sign that God is preparing something extraordinary for your life? Today I'm going to show you that when you put God first, when you place Him at the center of everything you do, He doesn't just help you survive the tough times, He turns them into divine blessings. This is not about hoping for good days, it's about knowing that God's power can take you from a place of pain to a place of purpose. Stick with me, because this truth will change the way you live your life. When we speak about putting God first, it's more than a casual instruction or a nice suggestion. It's a foundational principle of our faith. The Bible tells us clearly in Matthew 6:33, "But seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things will be added to you." Notice the word first. God isn't interested in coming second in your life. And He doesn't want to be part of your life only when it's convenient. He wants to be your priority in every moment, every decision, and every struggle. This isn't for His benefit, but for yours. When God is first, everything else falls into place because you are aligning your life with the ultimate source of wisdom, strength, and provision. Putting God first means surrendering your will, your desires, and your plans to Him. It means acknowledging that without Him, we can do nothing of lasting value. And that's where many people struggle. We like to be in control, don't we? We want things to happen our way, on our timeline. But God, in His infinite wisdom, often allows us to experience hardships to realign our priorities, to remind us that He is the one who can turn our trials into triumphs. Romans 8:28 says, "And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose." It doesn't say in some things or in the easy things, it says in all things. That means even in your darkest hour, God is working something good for you. One of the biggest mistakes we make as believers is to treat God as a backup plan. We consult Him when things are going wrong, but forget to include Him when everything seems right. But let me tell you something, God is not a plan B. He is not a safety net to catch you when life falls apart. He is the foundation upon which you should build your entire life. And when you build on that foundation, no storm can destroy you. In fact, those storms will serve a greater purpose. They will shape you, mold you, and bring you closer to the blessings that God has in store for you. Look at the life of Joseph in the Bible. This man was betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, falsely accused, and thrown into prison. By all accounts, his life should have been a story of suffering and failure. But because Joseph consistently put God first, even in his most desperate moments, God turned every hardship into a stepping stone toward His ultimate purpose. Joseph went from the pit to the palace because he trusted God through every trial. Genesis 50:20 captures this beautifully when Joseph says to his brothers, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." Do you see what happens when you put God first? He takes what others meant for your harm, what life tried to destroy you with, and He turns it into something that not only blesses you, but blesses others. But it starts with trust. It starts with placing Him first, even when it doesn't make sense. Even when the world is telling you to rely on your own strength. Even when everything around you seems to be falling apart. It's easy to trust God when everything is going well. It's easy to say God is good when the bills are paid, the kids are healthy, and life seems smooth. But true faith is tested in the fire of adversity. Will you still put God first when the answers don't come quickly? Will you still believe in His promises when you've prayed and nothing seems to change? The Bible says in James 1:2-4, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work, so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." Hardships are not signs that God has abandoned you. They are opportunities for your faith to grow. They are the crucible in which God refines you, prepares you, and positions you for greater blessings. You cannot experience the fullness of God's blessing without first going through the refining process of hardship. Gold is purified in fire, diamonds are formed under pressure, and your faith is strengthened through trials. When you put God first, you are allowing Him to use your struggles to shape you into the person He has called you to be. But there's more. Putting God first doesn't just change your perspective, it changes the outcome. When you trust God, even in the midst of your greatest difficulties, He steps into your situation in ways you cannot even imagine. In the story of Job, we see a man who lost everything: his family, his wealth, his health. And yet, through all his pain and suffering, Job continued to put God first. He didn't understand why he was going through such terrible hardship, but he trusted God anyway. And in the end, God restored everything to Job and more. Job 42:10 tells us that the Lord restored his fortunes and gave him twice as much as he had before. What does this teach us? It teaches us that God doesn't just want to bring you out of your hardship, He wants to bless you beyond what you had before. He wants to take your brokenness and create something more beautiful than you ever imagined. But it begins with making Him the priority. God can only pour His greatest blessings into a life that is fully surrendered to Him. Now, I know some of you are facing situations that seem impossible. Maybe you're dealing with financial struggles, health challenges, broken relationships, or overwhelming anxiety. You might be asking, how can I possibly put God first when everything around me is falling apart? The answer is simple but profound. You have to let go. You have to stop trying to fix everything in your own strength and trust that God has a plan, even when you can't see it. Proverbs 3:5-6 reminds us, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your path straight. When you put God first, you're saying, God, I don't have all the answers, but I know you do. I may not see the way out, but I trust that you are already making a way for me. And here's the beauty of it: when you take your hands off the situation and give it to God, He does what only He can do. He moves mountains. He opens doors. He takes what was meant for your destruction and turns it into your deliverance. This is the kind of faith that God is calling us to, a faith that doesn't waver in the face of adversity, a faith that remains steadfast when the storms of life are raging. When you put God first, you are positioning yourself for His supernatural intervention. You are stepping into a realm where your hardships become the very platform for His blessings to be revealed. When we think about putting God first, it's not just about moments of clarity or spiritual highs. It's about living in a constant state of surrender. Surrender doesn't mean defeat. It means giving up control so that God can step in with His power and wisdom. You see, the greatest hindrance to receiving God's blessings is not the difficulty of your situation, but the reluctance to fully trust God in that situation. We want to believe that we can handle things ourselves and that if we just work a little harder, things will improve. But God is telling us, give it to me. Let Maine handle it. Watch what I can do when you make me your priority. Think about the Israelites in the wilderness. They faced many hardships, from hunger to thirst, from battles to betrayals. Yet every time they put God first, He provided for them in miraculous ways. When they were hungry, He sent manna from heaven. When they were thirsty, He brought water out of a rock. When they faced enemies, He fought their battles. But the moment they took their eyes off God and tried to solve things on their own, they found themselves wandering in confusion and defeat. The lesson is clear: when you put God first, He meets your needs in ways you could never have imagined. But when you take matters into your own hands, you end up wandering in circles. Many people are in this very situation today, wandering, searching and striving, but finding no peace, no satisfaction, no breakthrough. And it's because they haven't truly surrendered their lives to God. They are still trying to figure things out on their own, still trying to be the masters of their own destiny. But as long as you are the one in control, you are limiting what God can do. God won't force His way into your life. He waits for you to invite Him in, to make Him first, to trust Him completely. And when you do, that's when the miracles begin to happen. Look at Peter walking on water in Matthew 14. As long as Peter kept his eyes on Jesus, he did the impossible. He walked on water. But the moment he looked away, the moment he focused on the wind and the waves, he began to sink. This is a powerful metaphor for our lives. As long as you keep God first, as long as your focus is on Him, you can rise above your circumstances. You can walk through storms that would normally drown you. But the moment you take your eyes off Him and start focusing on the problems around you, that's when you begin to sink. The storms of life are inevitable, but sinking is not. It's a choice. It's a result of where your focus lies. Putting God first doesn't mean the absence of storms, but it means the presence of peace in the midst of those storms. It means that no matter what comes your way, you are anchored in the unshakable truth that God is in control, that He is with you, and that He is working all things for your good. And that is the essence of faith, believing that God is turning your hardships into blessings even when you can't see it yet. Hebrews 11:1 tells us that faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Faith isn't about seeing the results immediately, it's about trusting that God is already at work behind the scenes. One of the most challenging aspects of putting God first is learning to trust His timing. We live in a culture of instant gratification. We want answers now, solutions today, and breakthroughs tomorrow. But God operates on His own timetable, and His timing is always perfect, even when it doesn't align with ours. Ecclesiastes 3:11 says, He has made everything beautiful in its time, not in our time, but in His time. And sometimes the hardest thing we have to do is wait. Waiting on God can feel like a hardship in itself, but it's in the waiting that God is often doing His greatest work. Think about Abraham, who waited decades for the fulfillment of God's promise that he would have a son. During those years of waiting, there were moments of doubt, moments of frustration, but Abraham continued to put God first. And in the end, God not only gave him a son, Isaac, but made him the father of many nations. What seemed like a delay was actually part of God's greater plan to bless Abraham in ways that went beyond his immediate desires. The same is true for you. Sometimes the very hardship you're facing is part of God's preparation for something greater. You may not understand it now, but God sees the bigger picture. He knows the purpose behind your pain. He knows that what you're going through today is shaping you for the blessings He has planned for tomorrow. Isaiah 55:8-9 reminds us, For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. So the question isn't whether or not you will face hardships. The question is, how will you respond to those hardships? Will you allow them to push you away from God, or will you let them draw you closer to Him? Will you try to solve them in your own strength, or will you surrender them to God and trust that He is turning them into blessings? The Apostle Paul understood this better than anyone. In 2 Corinthians 12:9-10, Paul speaks about a thorn in the flesh that caused him great pain. He pleaded with God 3 times to take it away, but God's response was, My grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Instead of removing the hardship, God gave Paul the strength to endure it and the perspective to see it as a blessing. Paul then declares, That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong. This is the paradox of the Christian life. It's in our moments of greatest weakness that God's strength is most evident. When we put God first, even in our weaknesses, He turns those weaknesses into strengths. He turns our suffering into testimonies. He turns our setbacks into comebacks. But it requires us to trust Him, to rely on Him, to let go of our own understanding and lean fully on His wisdom and power. God doesn't promise that the road will be easy, but He does promise that it will be worth it. James 1:12 says, Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love Him. Notice the sequence: perseverance, test, and then reward. The blessing comes after the trial, not before. But the key to receiving that blessing is to keep God first throughout the trial. It's to remain faithful, even when the path is difficult, even when the answers don't come quickly, even when everything within you wants to give up. Some of you might be in a season of waiting right now. Maybe you've been praying for a breakthrough, but it hasn't come yet. Maybe you've been seeking direction, but you feel like you're still wandering in the wilderness. Let me encourage you, don't lose heart. Don't stop putting God first. Don't let the delay convince you that God has forgotten about you. He is working even when you can't see it. And when the time is right, He will bring about the blessing that is far greater than anything you could have imagined. When you put God first, you are sowing seeds of faith that will yield a harvest of blessings. Galatians 6:9 says, "Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." That's a promise from God. The harvest is coming, but you have to stay faithful. You have to keep trusting. You have to keep putting God first, even when it's hard, even when the road is long, even when the answers don't come as quickly as you'd like. And let me tell you something about the harvest. It's not just about material blessings. Yes, God can and does provide for our physical needs. But the greatest blessings are often the spiritual ones, the peace that surpasses all understanding, the joy that remains even in the midst of sorrow, the strength to endure when everything around you is falling apart. These are the blessings that no one can take away from you. These are the blessings that come from putting God first. So my message to you today is simple: put God first in every area of your life. Put Him first in your decisions, in your relationships, in your work, in your finances, in your hardships. Trust that He is working all things for your good. And trust that He is turning your pain into purpose, your trials into triumphs, your hardships into blessings. And know that when you put God first, you are positioning yourself for the kind of blessings that will not only change your life, but the lives of those around you. When you consistently put God first, it goes beyond just praying when you're in trouble or seeking Him in a crisis. It means making Him the foundation of your entire life, not just an occasional visitor. Many people approach God like a firefighter. They only call on Him when their life is in flames, hoping for a quick rescue. But God desires a deeper, more intimate relationship with you. He doesn't want to be your last resort. He wants to be your first choice. And when He is your first choice, you'll find that the blessings aren't just in the rescue, but in the journey with Him. There's something powerful about living with a God-first mentality because it transforms your perspective. You start to see everything, your successes, your failures, your hardships, through the lens of God's greater purpose. When you understand that He is sovereign and that nothing escapes His plan, you can face life's challenges with a sense of peace and assurance. The Apostle Paul understood this perfectly. In Philippians 4:11-13, Paul says, "I have learned to be content whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do all this through Him who gives me strength." Paul's contentment wasn't rooted in his circumstances, it was rooted in his relationship with God. He had learned the secret that putting God first allowed him to endure both prosperity and adversity with the same level of peace. This is what happens when God is first in your life. You're no longer tossed back and forth by your circumstances. Whether you're in a season of abundance or a season of lack, you have the unshakable assurance that God is with you and that He's working everything for your good. You see, the blessings that come from putting God first aren't always material. Yes, God can provide for your physical needs, and He often does, but the deeper blessings are spiritual. They are the fruits of the Spirit: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Galatians 5:22-23. These are the qualities that develop in your life when God is at the center. And these qualities are far more valuable than any material blessing because they carry you through every situation in life. Think about Daniel in the lion's den. Daniel was a man who consistently put God first. Even when the law prohibited him from praying to God, Daniel refused to compromise his faith. He was thrown into the lion's den as a result. But because he put God first, God shut the mouths of the lions. What's powerful about this story is not just the miracle of Daniel being saved, but Daniel's unwavering commitment to put God first, even when it seemed like it would cost him everything. And as a result, not only was Daniel blessed, but God was glorified before the entire kingdom. The same principle applies in your life. When you put God first, even when it's difficult, even when it seems like you're sacrificing something, God is faithful to turn your hardship into a testimony. He uses your faithfulness as a platform to display His power, not just to you, but to those around you. This is why the blessings of putting God first are often multi-layered. Not only do you experience personal blessings, but your life becomes a living testimony that impacts others. people begin to see the difference in how you handle adversity, how you navigate challenges, and how you walk in peace even in the midst of storms. Remember the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in Daniel 3? These three men were thrown into a fiery furnace because they refused to bow down to an idol. They put God first, even at the risk of their lives. But in that furnace, God met them. The Bible says that King Nebuchadnezzar looked into the fire and saw a fourth man walking with them, who looked like a son of the gods. God didn't just save them from the fire, he was with them in the fire. And when they came out, they were not only unharmed, but the king himself declared, "There is no other God who can save in this way." This story is a powerful reminder that when you put God first, he doesn't always remove the fire, but he walks with you through it. And when you come out on the other side, you will be a witness to his power and glory. The fire that was meant to destroy you becomes the very thing that God uses to reveal his presence in your life. Some of you are in the fire right now. You're facing a situation that feels overwhelming, a trial that seems too intense to handle. But I want to encourage you today, God is with you in the fire. When you put him first, he will not only bring you through it, but he will use that very fire to refine you and to bring about blessings you never thought possible. The key is to trust him, to surrender to his plan, and to keep him at the center of your life. The Bible tells us in 1 Peter 5, 6, 7, "Humble yourselves, therefore, under God's mighty hand, that he may lift you up in due time. Cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you." Humbling yourself under God's mighty hand means acknowledging that his ways are higher than your ways, that his timing is better than your timing, and that his plans for you are greater than anything you could imagine. It's about letting go of your need to control every outcome and trusting that God is working even when you can't see it. This brings us to another crucial point about putting God first: patience. Putting God first requires a level of patience that goes beyond what the world offers. The world teaches us that we should get what we want when we want it and how we want it. But God's kingdom operates on a different timeline. He is never in a hurry, but he is always on time. Isaiah 40:31 says, "But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint." Notice the promise here. It's for those who hope in the Lord, those who wait on him, those who trust in his timing. When you put God first, you are choosing to wait on his timing. And that waiting is not wasted time. It is a time of preparation, a time of growth, a time when God is working behind the scenes to bring about the blessings he has for you. But it takes faith to wait. It takes faith to trust that God knows best, even when the answer doesn't come immediately. And it's in those moments of waiting that your faith is strengthened, that your character is developed, and that your relationship with God deepens. Think about David. He was anointed as king of Israel as a young man, but it took years before he actually took the throne. During those years, David faced numerous hardships. He was hunted by King Saul. He lived in caves. He experienced betrayal. But through it all, David kept putting God first. He trusted that God's timing was perfect. And when the time was right, God exalted him to the position of king. David's story teaches us that the path to God's blessings is often filled with tests and trials, but those tests are what prepare us to receive the fullness of what God has for us. You may be in a season where you feel like you're waiting on a promise. Maybe you've prayed for something and it hasn't come to pass yet. Maybe you've been faithful, but you haven't seen the breakthrough. I want to remind you today, God is faithful. He hasn't forgotten you. His promises are still true. And if you continue to put him first, you will see his blessings in your life. But it requires faith, patience, and a willingness to trust his timing. God's process is often uncomfortable, but it's always purposeful. He is shaping you, molding you, and preparing you for the blessings he has in store. Just as a potter carefully molds clay into a vessel, God is shaping your life. And sometimes that process involves hardship. But the hardship is not the end of the story. It's part of the journey toward the blessing. When you put God first, you are saying, God, I trust you with the process. I trust you with my life. I trust that you know what's best for me, even when I don't understand it. Faith is not about understanding every step of the journey. It's about trusting the one who is guiding you. It's about believing that the same God who brought you through the last trial will bring you through this one. And more than that, He will use this trial to bring you closer to His purpose for your life. In conclusion, putting God first is not just a spiritual principle. It's the key to unlocking His blessings in your life. When you surrender everything to Him, trusting His timing and His purpose, God turns your hardships into stepping stones toward greater victories. He walks with you through the fire, strengthens you in weakness, and blesses you beyond your understanding. As you keep God at the center, His peace, joy, and grace will overflow, transforming every trial into a testimony of His faithfulness. You can trust that your story is still being written by the one who knows the end from the beginning. May God bless you abundantly as you place Him first in all things. Thank you.